before you get too excited, I'm not going to share code. Because even though
proprietary and you're not
it's proprietary, exactly. It's all encrypted anyways, and you don't need it. you can ask GitHub Copilot to get it for you. But nevertheless, the target audience is of course developers. Woo. So okay, I'm too old. Nobody got my Steve Ballmer reference. Okay, it's fine. But the reason is simple. For Laravel, you actually need to code, whereas WordPress, you should, but you don't necessarily. So, who am I? As he introduced me, I work with WordPress, and I guess most of you probably had the pleasure in the past. But what does it mean? Like, how much? So let's see. Berlin, Zurich, many, but not all the batches on stage. London, partying, of course, very important. More partying, more batches. At a local meetup here. We even had a birthday cake. They grow up so fast, don't they? I mean, yeah. So it got to the point where my fiance asked me, like, are you in a cult? Like, everything, or many things, were WordPress. Even the t-shirts she stole from me for sleeping, WordPress. So yeah, I was really into WordPress, and nevertheless, there were still some things that I felt were like missing. Like, I felt this, how can I say, an emptiness inside, a hole that wasn't fulfilling. So WordPress couldn't surprise me anymore. I mean, why is it such a messy with its database? Why does it store configurations in the database and not in files? Come on. Why isn't it open for new things, like modern PHP, or treats Composer as a first-class citizen? Seriously, it started to feel like a hack for me. Not all the time, but many times. It seems to have lost itself in like small details, instead of focusing on the bigger picture. Don't get me wrong, you can absolutely do anything with WordPress. The question is, should you? So, in summary, we sort of started to grow apart. So, enter project 1. I started working with the Department of Data Science at the Fachhochschule in Westschweiz. And for their curriculum, they had this huge multi-site. WordPress multi-site is like multiple WordPress sites in one installation. And it was originally developed by the Cologne International School of Design. And they used it for even more students and even more sites in their multi-site. And it looked kind of like this. We modernized it a bit over time, but I couldn't find a screenshot anymore. Multi-site is essentially individual sites. So each site is separate, which is usually what you want if you want your friends to have a blog and your other friends to have a blog. So, but we wanted something else, obviously, because it's all interconnected, and we wanted to have a homepage where all the news from all the spaces that you were actually subscribed to were shown to you. We wanted a shared media library, shared search across all sites, all users, shared tags, maybe. And as a bunch of WordPress masochists, we simply worked around these things. It's like, yeah, you can do it. So, while I was working on this project, I got assigned a new developer who was also a student for the FANW at the time. And soon thereafter, he asked me, does it really have to be WordPress? It's blasphemy, right? So I was like, I never questioned this. But yeah, development became increasingly hard, especially because the people in Cologne took a different approach to where they want to take the project. They had to onboard the entire film school, which needed completely different features than we wanted. So less and less code was actually shared. And the project was started more than 10 years before I started working on it. So the code base was a bit dated, technical debt, maybe. No unit, feature tests, what is this? So yeah, when nobody was watching, I started to look into Laravel. Just on the side, just tiny little, yeah. And then something's wrong. Slow. So eventually, this is the actual site today, but my colleague started to design stuff for it. He was like, hey, we could do it like this and that. And then we started to push internally to build an MVP. And if you ever worked with a university, it's always a fight for budget and time and very difficult. But somehow we got it done. Like, we convinced enough people that, like, yeah, let's try this. With a new framework I haven't built a real world project for yet. But yeah.
That's the spirit.
Exactly. The good thing actually was that the other guy, was a developer for this project as well as a data science student. So he, as a developer, we are lazy. I mean, I am, I know. And he wanted a simple solution. One to use and one to build. And yeah, I realized I was not alone with those empty feelings that I had from suffering from WordPress a little bit. And then we started with a tight budget and instantly fell in love with the tall stack. For those of you who don't know what the tall stack is, it's Tailwind, Alpine.js, Livewire, and Laravel. Yeah, but I couldn't tell my WordPress friends, right? So it was a secret for a long time. Sorry, Pascal. And of course, not all things are perfect or were perfect, even with this project. Even though I had like this, new love, you know how it feels. It's so good. But yeah, of course, importing data, one of the learnings from this project is a freaking pain, always. With whatever data you have to work with, and no, it's not much better with Laravel, because imagine having, every site in WordPress multi-site has its own database, or database tables. So we had roughly 150 sites. It was a bit of a mess. But Laravel has a very nice package for it, or actually a few, but one where you can actually connect directly to the database, and that made things a lot easier. Yeah. Another thing I learned is that, like, with Laravel, you can build super fast. And the reason for that was pretty interesting for me to see. The other guy was actually a former Drupalista, and and I'm a WordPress developer, so the learning curve was actually surprisingly simple. It was pretty easy. We did the usual, we got a Laracast account, and started learning and hacking. And the great thing about Laravel, for me at least, is you can start out with the basics so fast, as you saw in your talk before, and then refactor later as you need, because it's, I don't know, it actually inspired me to touch my code again. Whereas in WordPress, I sometimes I'm like, okay, it has to be like this and that and this. But that's probably more a me problem than a WordPress problem in general. So, nevertheless, not all Laravel packages are equal. Similar to WordPress plugins, there's more than 60,000 of them. There's a bunch of packages for Laravel. For every kind of use case, there's at least 3. And most of them suck. Like, they're bad, unmaintained, or come with their own interface. whatever.
Like
It's
NPM.
what? Did someone say NPM? No. But at least there are a bunch of packages you can like you said, fork them and never return the code back. Because nobody would do your PR anyways if there's no maintainer or whatever. So the question probably, well, the first project that was like actually quite big to move to Laravel, it felt like an affair. Not that I know how this feels, of course, but I tasted the forbidden fruit, so to say. And the client was super happy, or still is. I still talk to them, I don't work for them at the moment, but they're like super happy. There's now a bigger development team, and they keep building and innovating at a much faster pace than before. But would I actually do it again? Well, enter project 2. Another thing that you can do with WordPress is building a SaaS. It's absolutely possible. And depending on your experience or the stack of choice, it sometimes actually makes a lot of sense. And as a WordPress masochist, I sort of found joy in that actually as well. So yes, it started off as a WordPress project. I did this before actually, Pascal can tell. We used to work together at an agency I co-founded where we built Fresh Jobs, a job platform, of course, based on WordPress. But that's not the project I'm going to talk about. A client approached me and they wanted to build an MVP for an online learning platform. And they were used to WordPress, they had WordPress sites before, and they wanted me to build the MVP so they could go to investors and say, hey, we need big bucks. And so we did this, and then we took the actual WordPress site into production, as you do, because why not? And the WordPress stack actually consisted of WooCommerce, the e-commerce extension plus subscriptions, because it was a subscription-based service. LearnDash, learn management system, lots of custom code and lots of custom importers, because of course they had a team of 30 teachers working on the content, and I told them to just do it in Excel so I could import CSVs. It's difficult if you have math formulas in there. But yeah. And the hosting was fairly expensive because we almost couldn't cache the stuff properly because every student had different exams, every student had real-time information stuff going on. But it worked. So we got to the point where we got more money, and we were thinking about, should we stay or go, basically. So, we only used a fraction of the features that the system actually offered. And it was slow at times, and it was difficult to work with. And so we did some basic calculations, and the cost of actually hiring people and improving the WordPress stack would have been about the same as rebuilding the entire learn management system with the tall stack at that point. And to my big surprise, it was a lot easier to hire Laravel people globally than to find actually good WordPress developers. So we started working on the Laravel version, and we were insane enough to rebuild the entire site with roughly 1,000 learn videos, roughly 10,000 exercises in 3.5 months. And of course, because we are Swiss, we had to have our own payment gateway. I would have loved to use Stripe, Cashier, first party package for Laravel, but no, we couldn't. That was a pain. And we, at that time, we were a team of like 7 developers working across like 4 full-time jobs, and that was, yeah, it worked well, sort of. It was called, that's how it looks now, it was called Schlafux when I was still there. It's now rebranded to Volpo, and they expand fast across Europe. They just, I think they just raised another 7 million or something. It was in the news like recently. And they still use the same stack. So tall stack, Laravel. I believe they now need a bit more server power than we did back then, but that's fine.
Nice.
So learnings from that project. The other way around, beware of premium WordPress plugins. Just because it says premium does not necessarily mean premium. Looking at you, LearnDash. So yeah, and neither is support necessarily good, but I think that goes with all code anyways that you use. It's your duty to actually thorough assess what you need in production, or YOLO, I don't know. It's up to you. So this is actually one of my biggest learnings. What I always loved about WordPress is the insane flexibility. You can do whatever, you can build however you want, and that was actually great, sort of. But the flexibility in WordPress and Laravel are absolutely not the same thing. There are almost no best practices in WordPress that everyone is held against, except for core, which is good, but more people should read the core and then do it the same way, please. Yeah, and this is like a bliss. That like the convention over configuration is actually convenience. It makes you faster, makes things easier, and you can always change whatever part you don't like without reinventing the entire wheel, so that's pretty good. And the other thing that I really like about Laravel is the developer experience. It's just unmatched. I haven't found anything else. I mean, Ruby on Rails was close back in the day. I guess still is. But it's just amazing. I mean, the WordPress ecosystem has a lot to offer. Like I said, 60,000 plus plugins and whatnot. But it became increasingly difficult to navigate. And I feel what once was a huge benefit for WordPress is now slowing its progress. And of course, you can write tests for WordPress. I just never felt like doing it, because setting everything up so it works was a pain. Whereas here, as you saw in your demo, it comes with tests. Ah, how good is that? And tests, especially in that project where I was like the CTO for the thing, it helps you sleep at night. It's really good. It's really good. So, is the grass always greener on the other side? The best tool is the tool you know. And knowing more tools gives you much more flexibility in your work. And what I have to say is that both ecosystems have amazing communities, big communities, and they're fun, approachable, and very inviting to work with. And at the end of the day, each job is different, you know, and this is definitely not the answer you were looking for. But yeah, there's no definitive answer for me, and I think you can love more than one tech stack at any given time. And for me, as a I never got a computer science degree or anything. I did not even, I don't know if you know the apprenticeship Mediamatiker. It's a thing, or was a thing, where you learn everything and nothing at the same time. But hey, you got to touch a computer more than people who were just doing an office job, so it's fun, right? No. Laravel liberated me in a way that, like, I can build anything of scale, however I want, and I never felt this way with WordPress, but probably because I don't know, it was not equally approachable to me. And Pascal would probably say something else, but that's fine. And so it helped me fill these missing parts, these holes that WordPress left inside of me, sort of. And I since started building stuff with Laravel, React, Python, Go, Rust, whatever. Probably not all production ready, of course. I mean, you can, but it's probably a shit show. But hey, you can build anything you want. But WordPress, at the end of the day, is still an absolutely lovely tool in my tool belt. And I'm currently building a bigger e-commerce and complex e-commerce site with it. And I don't think that I can build it as fast with all the features that it needs in Laravel. Maybe one day I look back on this and I'm like, wow, I should have done it. But currently I don't think so. So in closing, don't fall for the cult trap. No matter what community you like, and build with the tools you like and stay open to learn new things. Thank you.
So heartwarming.
I actually got a bunch of questions that I might not have answered on Twitter. If you don't have any questions right now, I can just do them. Okay. Pascal asked, what can WordPress learn from Laravel? Actually, in a way that would be doable, of course. What I found very interesting is seeing how the communities in both Laravel and WordPress, competitors, competing companies, competing for contracts, they all work together at the end of the day, building packages and doing PRs and whatnot. It's really nice to see. But what's missing at the moment is also out of a discussion that I recently had with WordPress people who build fairly huge enterprise-size WordPress things and know WordPress even more than I do, way more than I do. There's something like missing, like there's no glue or no council that takes care of the best practices you should do, especially with MarTech integrations or integrating tools that everyone's using nowadays. And so that's sort of a thing that I think WordPress can absolutely improve in. And that will make it much better. Yes?
I have to question the other way around.
Yes, what is missing?
What is missing in Laravel that WordPress is better?
Well, still, actually, it's a topic that not everyone likes, but I really enjoy the new editor. And there is an adaptation called Laravel. It sort of breaks all the time. Sometimes it works. But that's definitely something that, like, there are integrations for every what you see is what you get editor, markdown editor, you name it, available for Laravel. But to make it really nice for the end user takes a lot more effort, I believe, than when you start with a WordPress site. And of course, you have to develop more stuff yourself. The scaffolding is super nice, and you get like you saw, the entire login, user handling, everything is out of the box available in the stack of your choice. But there is a lot of things that you have to build yourself, whereas in WordPress you just take it off the shelf and use it once you know your way around or what plugin actually works or is stable enough to be used. Yeah. Other things?
From the perspective of,
Yeah.
no, I can speak louder.
It's not working.
You mentioned the lack of, not the lack, but that you didn't start from a technical background. I'm curious from that perspective.
Well, not necessarily non-technical, but yeah.
Not as low level or not as deep, not computer science heavy.
Exactly.
from that perspective, how does it feel like if you were to look at it from the fresh eyes that you first laid upon WordPress, if you were to look at it and try to see it as you're discovering Laravel now for the first time?
Well, back in the day when I started building sites, I was basically just in need of a semi-solid CMS that my script kiddie knowledge could sort of work with and dabble with. And at first I actually used a CMS and I looked it up, it still exists. CMS made simple. It's very ugly. It's PHP based and it was a lot of fun because you could hack it even more easily than WordPress. It was super approachable. And going back to what you asked with like Laravel, I probably would have felt very intimidated because back when I started out, I didn't know half of the lingua that is used in the docs to understand what was going on. I think it took me ages to understand what a middleware is because I don't have a computer science background. So yeah, I think I would be intimidated by it, and it can be made even more approachable, I guess. Then what other question was there? Oh yeah, is Livefire really a good solution? Well, it depends. For me, it prevented me from building spas or finally learning JavaScript very well, still. So for me it was great, or still is. But I since started to like learn and work with a lot more JavaScript stuff. So yeah, I could do it in Vue or React any day as well now, but I really like it because it's so simple, so approachable, and especially if you have someone who's just a backend developer, if that still exists nowadays, they can wrap their mind around it pretty quickly. I had one guy on the team for the second project, and he was like, oh, if the front end is built in all JavaScript, no, he wasn't sure. And with that, he like learned it in a day and built crazy stuff with it that actually scaled. We were first a bit scared about like, will the server handle all the back and forth requests, but you can throttle them whenever you need, and it worked out great. So yeah. Another question I got was, how do Laravel CMS solutions compare? And I actually haven't used a Laravel CMS to this day. But I quickly rolled my own when necessary with like Markdown and a bit of YAML front matter stuff, and it works. But I'm curious, I think I'm going to look into, I can never say it. Statanic, exactly. Yes, I think it's very interesting. So we'll see.
It's a good choice, yeah, for sure.
Cool. Any other questions? Right, thanks for having me.